Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter Live. Very much appreciate it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. The Sick Podcast, of course, brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. They are a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager, a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for the hot summer days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra Light. Ultra refreshing, and also brought to you in part by Playground. Experience Playground's world-renowned poker experience with free food and drinks at the cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot that is over $1.1 million in climbing, weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service. Why play anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground and Accent Insurance Solutions. You know that all insurance isn't created equal. You know where to find the right solution for you. It's Accent Insurance. Accent doesn't sell insurance. They shop insurance for you to find the right product right on the money, whatever your insurance needs, home, automobile, or business. Call the Accent team today at 514-363-3636 and get the right solution at the right price. Visit their website at accentassurance.com. So that's www.accentassurance.com. The NHL draft was about 3 weeks ago, but I have to tell you, if there's one thing I learned when I was in Vegas, was that Craig Button was a very, very busy guy, so I wasn't able to get a hold of him really in Vegas. I did cross paths with him a couple of times, said hi. As a matter of fact, we even took a selfie together, which was pretty cool. And then after that, he had so much work to do as well. And I talked to him last week here on the Sick Podcast because the Canadiens hadn't yet made a trade. And I said to him, I said, what can the management team, what are they thinking about right now? What are they doing? What's the typical day like when you start getting into, the middle of July and stuff like that, or second week of July? And he was able to answer that. But I told him, I said, it's going to be next week, the week after that, we're going to talk about the draft. And here we are, and we're talking about it. Craig, how are you?
I'm great, Tony. Really am. And, it feels like the draft was yesterday, yet we know it was over 2 weeks ago. But how special was it for you to be at the Sphere? To me, I was expecting something fantastic. It exceeded my expectations.
Well, for me, it was very special to be in Vegas, first of all. And our NHL draft coverage 2024 was actually brought to you and presented by Betway. And I thank them very much because I was there representing the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. Shane Gaumont was there representing the Recruits Draftcast podcast. And Jimmy Murphy was there representing the Sick Podcast, the Eye Test. So want to thank them for that opportunity. For me, it was my first time in Vegas, so I was blown away. I wish it would have been cooler and not as hot as it was because I would have walked more. But to answer your question, the Sphere I found was so amazing. It's one of the most amazing, I don't even know if we can call it an arena. It is an arena because there's a ton of seats in it, but it's one of the most, let's call it a venue. It's one of the most amazing venues. It's the most amazing venue I've ever been to in my life. And you know what? As much as I'd love to see the NHL draft in Montreal, because it would save me on some travel and it's right here in my own backyard, I was so blown away by the Sphere that I'd almost love the National Hockey League to have every single draft from the Sphere, like going forward. And I know the process is going to change next year, which I think is unfortunate, by the way, because I like what they have going. I think it's the National Hockey League. It's the way they do it. It's different than other leagues. Personally, I wouldn't change it. And you know what? I think I'd have it at the Sphere every single year. How about you?
Yeah, I think that the commissioner Gary Bettman talked about, hey, you know what? NHL teams responded that they wanted a little bit of a change. It doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be going forward. Gary says that it's always, we're always open to the ideas, and the idea of having the draft at the Sphere was phenomenal, and I think it turned out just fabulous for everybody that took part in it. You know what I kept thinking about, Tony? I mean,
Yeah.
you were down on the floor. It's theater seating, so it's like call it a venue, call it a theater, but it's theater seating. I kept thinking about an indoor hockey game at the Sphere. We did a game at Dodger Stadium. We did a game at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. We did a game in Nashville. All I kept thinking about was what would an NHL game at Sphere look like? Like, to me, that's where my mind took me. The draft is one thing. It was special. I think it was special for everybody, the players, the pictures all up, and the video presentation. But how about a game there?
Yeah, that would be amazing. By the way, there's something that caught my attention. Was I was staying at the Venetian, okay, and several players were, and Macklin Celebrini was one of them. So I'm, everywhere you go, you walk, you bump into a player. But I'm looking at Celebrini, and he's going to order some food. He's all alone. Nobody in Vegas knows who he is. And it's just, if he was an NFL player or he was an NBA player, it would be crazy around him, like crazy around him. Even if he was an up-and-coming soccer player, it would be crazy around him. A soccer player from Europe or South America, because if he was a North American player, probably not. It was, I find the National Hockey League and the sport of hockey, I find we all have to do a better job of making everyone aware of who the stars of today are and who the stars of tomorrow are. And really, everyone's got to market these stars. I think there's a big window of opportunity to market these stars a lot more and a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I know the NHLPA is really focused in on the growth of the game with respect to exposure of the game, and exposure of the game means exposure of the players. And there's some I guess history that needs to be changed. Part of the hockey history is that hockey players are modest, hockey players are humble, but you can still be modest and humble and still have exposure, and you can still have the ability to tell your story and tell the story on a daily basis if you want to, or tell it every week. And if we look at how features are done, if we look at how documentaries are done, and where society is headed with respect to how we present not only events, how we present rock stars, how we present music stars, how we present movie stars, and to your point, NBA stars, NFL stars. There's a platform to move forward there that can really add exposure to the individual players, and most importantly, the game, which will also grow revenue. So I think your point is a very good one. And like, if Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews drafted by Edmonton and Toronto, they were very well recognized. But to your point, Macklin Celebrini, who's a brilliant player, just goes about his business largely unrecognized in Vegas.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Anyway, it was an awesome experience. I mean, I wasn't quite crazy about my travel day going down. I don't know. Did I tell you about it, by the way? I don't want to bore you, but did I tell you?
Tell me.
All right. So I wanted to get a direct flight, but unfortunately, we booked a little bit later than maybe we should have, and the direct flights were all sold out. So I had to connect. So I'm connecting through Chicago in what was supposed to be an hour and 43-minute flight. Guess how long my flight was from Montreal to Chicago total? So you were a delay. It was probably only an hour and 43-minute flight, but probably the delay, I'm going to guess you had 5 hours added onto that. All right. So we fly to Chicago, and at one point, we're not landing. And it just seems like we're standing still, or we're going round and round and round and round. So they let us know that they're waiting for clearance to land because there's thunderstorms. And then we weren't able to get clearance, and it got worse and worse and worse. And the thunderstorms got so bad that they actually closed down Chicago O'Hare Airport. So then they said we have to divert to Indianapolis. By the time we landed in Indy, was probably 4 hours. So then we arrive in Indy. They say, okay, you know what? We're not ready to go back anytime soon. Still thunderstorms. Airport closed in Chicago. Get off the plane. So we make our way into the airport in Indy. We're there for a couple of hours. And then they say, okay, we got the green light to go back to Chicago. Guess what? The thunderstorms continued. And so instead of flying into the storms, we had to fly away from the storms. So instead of a regular 40-minute flight, which would have been from point A to point B, we had to go all the way around, and it took another 4 hours. So now 4 hours to Indy, 2 hours at Indy Airport, another 4 hours from Indy to Chicago. That's 10 hours. Guess what happens when I get there? Missed the connecting flight, of course, by about 30 minutes because they insisted, because it was postponed. They insisted on checking in my luggage. United did. And I said no, and they said there's no room on the plane. In the end, there was room on the plane, but then it took them about 30 minutes to give me my luggage, and I ended up missing my connection by about 15 or 20 minutes. So I probably would have caught it if I would have had my own luggage. And then Shane Gaumont is at master control. The poor young man freaked out because we got to the United counter and we said, look, we missed our connecting flight. And we said, there's another flight leaving for Vegas in an hour direct from Chicago here with United. We'd like to get on that plane. And the gentleman says, check your itinerary, check your email because you've been rerouted for sure. We check our email and they want us to go from Chicago to Washington, from Washington, then to Houston, and from Houston, then to Vegas. And I said, no. And he said, yes. I said, no. He said, yes. So I waited in line. I needed to speak to the gentleman. I said, listen, this has been the worst travel day of my life. What was supposed to be an hour, 43-minute flight to Chicago took about 10. I missed my connecting flight because you insisted on checking in my luggage because there was no room when there was room. And because of that delay, I missed my connecting flight. This is my first experience to going to Vegas. And I have a lot of work lined up and I really need to get there. And I really need you to save the day. So I would really appreciate it if you can we're a party of 3. If you can get us on that plane, you would be my hero if you do. And he said, wait 5 minutes. And 5 minutes later, he gave me 3 boarding passes and said, you're on that plane. So it's my story.
Everybody listening here, and I want everybody to pay attention to what Tony just said. I mean, there's certain things you can't control. Thunderstorms. The airlines do not create thunderstorms.
Yeah.
I joke about Mother Nature being undefeated. But when you're confronted with a challenge like Tony and his entourage were confronted with, there's a way to deal with it. And Tony, you could have gone up there and started banging your fist on the desk or raising your voice, but you went there. You were reasonable. You kept your voice in a really good tenor, and now people are ready to help you because the airlines do want to help people. What they're not going to do is help people that are abusive. They are not trying to create delays. So for everybody tuning in to the Sick Podcast, that right there, folks, is how you deal with disruptions, how you find a solution to a problem, and how you communicate with people that are have the ability to make things happen. Well done.
And if you don't trust your ability to communicate that way, like I didn't either, to tell you the truth, you take one deep breath before going to the counter. And that's what I did. And then that was the key. And then it worked. All right. Okay. One of the key moments in the NHL season is around the draft. And you know what? With all due respect that everyone has a list, and there's so many people that we put on, and I have so much respect for a lot of people, but around the circles of the National Hockey League, let's be honest, everyone waits for Bob McKenzie's list and for Craig Button's list. And your list came out, and then we had a chance to see what happened in round 1 and rounds 2 to 7 on day 2. Which pick most surprised you from Friday night, round 1?
Let's just start with the first 12, 13 picks. Let's start with the first 12 picks. And you talk about Bob. So, Bob and myself were talking about this as he did his final list, as we're trying to see how the draft may unfold. And we were pretty confident that we knew who 11 of the first 12, 13 players were going to be. We did not know in what order, but
Got
we were pretty confident the 6 defensemen were going to be off the board in the first 12 picks. We knew Celebrini was going to be off the board. We knew Lidstrom was going to be off the board. We knew Demidov was going to be off the board. Well, all of a sudden, you're at 9 players. Like, and this is not any type of magic formula.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had identified themselves. Berkeley Cat got in there. TJ Ginland had just a great run there. So when you start to consider where it was at, so I know a lot of people were talking about Beckett Seneke, going 3 to the Anaheim Ducks. But if you break it down and you look at it in this regard, Celebrini's off the board. They were not going to take a defenseman. So that's 6 defensemen off the board. They were not taking a center. So Lidstrom and Catton are off the board. So when you start to look at it from the perspective of the Anaheim Ducks, there's 3 players. They wanted a forward, and there's 3 players now they're looking at. It's Seneke, Demidov, and Iginla. So people say, and when I took a step back and I considered what they were doing, nobody was surprised that Seneke went in the top 10. I don't think anybody was surprised he went in the top 12. But I mean, I know Beckett was surprised that he went 3. That's okay. That was a great moment in the draft. But for the Anaheim Ducks, once you start to peel back the onion, right, you start to see, oh, wait a sec, this is totally all their decision was between 3 forwards. That's all it was. And they said, we want the big right winger. We want the big right winger that has some similarities to Corey Perry. And we know what a great Anaheim Duck Corey Perry was. I think that's just coincidence, but we know that who they liked. And much like last year when there was a lot of talk, oh, Fantilli's going to be the second pick, Anaheim steps up and goes, no, we want Karlsson. It's not that they don't like Fantilli. It's just like, it's not like they don't like Demidov or they don't like Iginla, but you got to put a stake in the ground. And I think for Beckett, so it wasn't a surprise to me. Once I took a step back, as you go through the first round and you can look at it, I believe that first 20 pick, not 20 pick, I think 20 picks, everybody knows they're going to be first rounders. Maybe it's 22, whatever.
Yeah.
After that, I think the range becomes long. I think the range becomes much bigger. And that's why a team will say, we can't believe we got that player at 39. It's because they had him rated much higher. So as the draft unfolds and we can say we're surprised, and having worked drafts, both from a team perspective and a media perspective, I hear that, oh, that's an off-the-board pick. Really? The only board that matters is the team's board. So they took the player on their board. What do you mean it's off-the-board pick?
Yeah,
it's off the board because you didn't rate them higher or didn't rate them as high as the team did. So that's the way I look at the draft. I guess a couple of things. It didn't surprise me that Cole Hudson went as early as he did. Teams are not going to make the same mistake that they made with Lane Hudson.
Yeah.
I thought that I thought, in a draft where, there was some uncertainty about some goaltenders. There was a number of goaltenders that went in the second round, which I thought was interesting because teams they're doing a lot of evaluation. It might've been more of a projection on the goaltenders, but other than that, I can understand why Levshunov went number 2, but and for other teams, when one player goes, it helps you assess, okay, what are the other players? I know the San Jose Sharks made a trade with Buffalo. They went from 14 to 11. They wanted a defenseman with that second pick. They knew they weren't getting one of the top 6 defenders with the 14th pick. So they acted and they moved up to 11. They got Sam Dickinson. Now, there's a lot of people that I know and respect that thought Sam Dickinson might have been the best defenseman in the draft. Bulliam goes 12. Salayev goes 10. Perret goes 9. All good players, but all different types.
All right. Give me the whole thought process behind the issuing of entry-level contracts. Beckett Seneke, like you said, goes 3rd overall, and much to his surprise. And then not only does he go 3rd overall, boom, he's given a 3-year entry-level contract right away. What are teams looking at when they issue these entry-level contracts? I mean, some of them do it a little bit sooner than others. Some of them wait. Some of them you're probably actually caught by surprise by, some of them wanting to accelerate the whole process. What should teams be thinking of here when they offer these entry-level contracts to some of these kids that they draft?
Well, if you start, I think what you're looking at now is it's pretty much established. I mean, you've just put a stake in the ground on a first-round pick. Okay, you've done a lot of work over years, and then you get to that point, you draft a player. It's pretty much, clear to everybody what the entry-level contract's going to look like for a first-round draft pick. You're going to have, the NHL, it's mandatory two-way. You can only get so much in signing bonus. So the teams, with that certainty and with the conviction that the player they just drafted, just put something behind themselves. The player can now just go and work on his development. The team can just focus on working with the player on his development. I mean, it was different when you had to give players $1 million signing bonuses. You go, okay, we better be a little bit more sure of this. Now, the signing bonuses are below $100,000 a year, and that's really manageable for the teams. Remember, the NHL teams now, for the most part, are billion-dollar businesses at a minimum. So this is your future. This is what you're doing. And we've seen lots of players sign. Celebrini signed, Levshunov signed, Seneki signs, Catton signs, Perret signs, Gridin, who went late in the first round to Calgary signs. We're Sam Dickinson signs. Like, they're all signing. And teams have just basically said, why wait? Why wait? We're going to sign them anyway. So let's get it on. Let's get it done. Players can get some little bit of money off their signing bonuses. It's not big money, but for an 18-year-old kid, it matters. And I think that it clears off any idea that the player is feeling pressure. He can just go and play and work on his development.
All right. So Macklin Celebrini goes 1 to San Jose, and Levshunov goes 2 to Chicago, and Seneka goes number 3 to Anaheim, and Caden Lindstrom goes number 4 to Columbus. And then with the number 5 pick, was there ever any doubt for you? Were you wondering who the Canadiens were going to pick at 5 once that was the order at 4? Or were you pretty certain they were going to go with Demidov?
Yeah, I didn't see another option for them. I mean, yeah, you might have been able to say TJ Ginla, but Demidov is a mercurial talent. When you consider how gifted he is. And Montreal certainly knew how gifted he was. And I want to say this, Chicago knew how gifted he was. Anaheim knew how gifted he was. Columbus was looking for a different type of player in the middle of the ice, and that's what Caden Lindstrom delivered on. But Demidov, when you get to that point, I thought that for my rankings and how I'm rating players, I thought it was Celebrini, draw a line, Demidov, draw a line, and then after that, there was 9-10 players that fall into that next group. Could it be 9? Could it be 10? Yeah, we can all debate on it. But that's what I thought. And I thought Demidov, and one of the things that I said about Chicago, I said, like, if you want to take Levshunov, he's a really good player. Just stand up and say, we got the player that we wanted, and we think for us, this is the best player for us. Don't start waffling. Well, we're not sure about Demidov's contract status. We don't know when. Every single Russian has come over and played. And now with Michkov, we heard all this last year about Michkov. It's 1 year, not 3. He's over. He's over here.
Yeah, he's over.
Every Russian has come over and played. This idea that, like, the Russians, they're not coming. We're not sure. Yes, you are sure. They're coming.
Yeah.
And they're good.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And so, the Canadiens agree with you, because the Canadiens had Demidov number 2 on their list as well. Actually, Kent Hughes said, look, we didn't even take Celebrini into consideration because we knew that he was going number 1. But, so the number 1 guy on our list after that was Demidov. So Marty Lapointe went as far as saying that he thinks the Canadiens got the steal of the draft. Now, I'm not so sure it's a huge steal when, and instead of 2 he ends, or 3 or 4 he goes 5. That's only a difference of a couple. And like those other teams, they had other needs as well, and I think some of those teams were drafting by need and not only by best player available. But we'll have to wait and see. But it's pretty encouraging, man, because I got to tell you, ever since the pick was announced by the great Celine Dion, there has been like a buzz through Montreal Canadiens universe. It's unbelievable. People can't wait for Demidov. They can't wait.
Right, he's a special talent. I really believe that. I think he's got Kucherov-esque type talent, that type of skill, that type of ability. The way I've described him is he's got this 360-degree awareness, and he knows he's like a great quarterback. He knows what option 1 is. He knows what option 2 is, 3, 4, 5, and then depending on what you're going to defend, he's going to be able to make a decision on what one he's going to exploit. And that's a skill in and of itself. a lot of players can say, well, I know one or two options. Like Kucherov, when you think about Kucherov, the puck on his stick, and you don't know where it's going. He might shoot, he might pass one place he might pass another place. But he's always probing and surveying the landscape. That's how Demidov plays. And I think Demidov, with that type of high-end talent, is not only somebody that is a great fit for any team in the NHL, but for the Montreal Canadiens not trying to add with a focus on adding high-end skill. They got that in Demidov. And when you consider Marty St. Louis, Hall of Famer, and how he played and how he rounded out his game and what he did, for Cole Caulfield, I think this is a marriage made in heaven, hockey heaven, with Marty St. Louis, the coach, and Demidov, the player.
Now, he's got one more year in Russia. Ideally, it would be in the KHL and not in the MHL. But my question to you is, you think if he came over right away, he could play?
I think that, he'd have a pretty good chance. I think he'd have because his hockey sense is off the charts. Mm-hmm. And his skill. One of the things that's interesting to me, and I heard this over the course of the last couple of years, is that, well, what about his skating? What about his skating? What are you talking about his skating? Do you watch the game?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't put him in the 500 meters speed skating in the Olympics. Skating, just watch the game.
Yeah.
Like, special things happen when he's on the ice and he has the puck. And to me, that is the type of player, the processing speed, his quickness to read a play, his quickness to get into the right spots at the right times is tremendous. And again, those types of players are not very common. And I think that he's a very unique player. Kucherov's going to the Hall of Fame. So when I throw out a Kucherov comparable type, I'm not doing that just to throw it out. I mean, I'm doing that out of respect for both Kucherov and for Demidov.
I hear you. All right. Okay. So TJ Ginla goes 6 to Utah, and Berkeley Catton, of course, was much talked about for a season that he had. I think he went 8 to Seattle, if memory serves me well. After Demidov, are there players that can, in your opinion, end up being superstars in the National Hockey League that were drafted after Demidov?
Well, you've heard me say this about Jerome Iginla. When we drafted him 11th, we thought he was a 30-goal scorer, and we underestimated him. He became a superstar. I mean, just an unbelievable player, one of the best ever. And I don't want to put that pressure on Tej, but I think Tej has star quality. Whether he can get the superstar, I think the one player that could really be a superstar in the mold of Erik Karlsson is Zane Parekh. I think that he's unique. He's a unique offensive skilled defenseman. The way the game is played, the abilities that he possesses, and that's what you're drafting him for. You're not drafting him to be a big, rugged, physical type defender. You're asking him to be a real top-notch driver of play. And Erik Karlsson has done that. 3 Norris trophies. He's been a fantastic player in the NHL. There's no question that Erik Karlsson has been a superstar. So that would be the player that I would think. I also think Zeev Buium could be that player as well, because I think he's so much like Scott Niedermayer in my view. The way he plays, the way he controls the game. And Scott Niedermayer was a quiet superstar. Erik Karlsson had a little bit of a bigger bang on the drum as a superstar. But I think those are the players that I think have the qualities to be superstars. So, Demidov, TJ Ginla, I think, has got star quality written all over him. I don't want to underestimate him, but Parekh and Buium to me are the guys after that I think have the potential. I'm not going to label them in that regard today, but I think they have that potential.
A couple of days ago, I spoke with Scott Wheeler of The Athletic, and we were talking about the draft, and I asked him about Cole Eiserman, who 1 year ago was in a conversation of going top 3 in the draft, and then you get the draft week, and all of a sudden, he's no longer in the top 10 based on people's list that you hear. And then he ends up getting drafted 20th. He seemed to be unbelievable value at 20 when he was talked about in the top 3 1 year ago. And I said to Scott, I said, do you have any doubts about this player? Because the doubts that are out there is that if he doesn't score, how will he impact the game? And I'll hold off on what he thought about him in just a second. I want to ask you that same question, then I'll compare. Do you have any doubts as to Cole Eiserman's ability to be able to score goals at the National Hockey League level?
I think he's the best goal scorer in the 2024 draft. He broke Cole Caulfield's record for most goals at the National Team Development Program. I said this to Cole over the course of the year. I said, I think there's only one thing you're guilty of, and that's trying to be excellent every shift. That's an inner drive. That's an inner fire where he goes out on the ice every single time trying to be the very best. We know you cannot be excellent every single shift. Sometimes you got to just realize, okay, I'm going to play for the next shift. That's part of maturing. That's part of the maturation process. I said at the time, leading into the draft, if you want to look at what he doesn't do, then you're not going to draft him. You're drafting him because he's an elite goal scorer. And I compared it to the 1977 draft with Mike Bossy. The same things that were said about Cole Eiserman were said about Mike Bossy at that time. What about them? Al Arbor famously said, "Give me the goal scorer. I'll teach him how to check." And I think I don't think Cole is committed to being a more complete player, a better player in different areas of the game. And certainly, I think Nick Four, who coached him at the National Team Development Program, really got him in that mindset. And I think he'll do that. I think there's also another real benefit here for Cole. He's going to go play for Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello. Those two individuals are think about all Patrick's been around. And think about the players that he played with. McKinnon was a Rookie of the Year when Patrick was coaching in Colorado.
Yeah.
Development, understanding how to play different ways in the game when you're not at your single most strength. And Lou is going to be patient and put players into positions to develop. And so I think that for Cole, there's a real opportunity for him to realize his talents and his abilities and be a top-notch goal scorer in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, and Patrick himself with the Montreal Canadiens played a guy who had some 250 goal seasons, and Stéphane Richer.
Oh yeah,
right. So he'll know. Okay, so but to the point where do you think the Canadiens will be kicking themselves that he went one pick before they were scheduled to pick a 21? Because it was earlier in the day on the Friday morning where the Canadiens traded pick 26, 57, and 198, if memory serves me well, to Los Angeles in the 2024 draft, and in return, they got Los Angeles' 21st pick over the draft. So they were able to move up 5 spots. And obviously, they did so saying, you know what? We probably have 4 players in mind. And if we get one of the 4, we're happy. I think Cole Eiserman was one of the 4 because they interviewed him on the Thursday, the day before. I think he was one of the 4.
And that's exactly what ends up happening. So you're the Montreal Canadiens, and you're Kent, and you're Jeff, and you're Mr. Bobroff and Mr. Lapointe, and they're sitting around, and they are now talking about who's our group of players. Do we think any of these 4? Let's just say it's 4. Do we think any of these guys will be at 26? And they're all going, no. So now it pushes Kent into action. Kent now moves up to 21, where now they're going, okay, now we got a chance at getting this group. And certainly what they would have done is delineated at a certain point that these players were not going to be there at 26, and we want to give ourselves a chance, adding more high-end skill. I thought there was all kinds of symmetry unfolding with the draft as Cole Eiserman was moving further down the list. And at 20, the Islanders. Okay, that's the Mike Bossy comparison. Montreal at 21, he breaks Cole Caulfield's record and is an elite goal scorer. So you had all these types of scenarios that were playing out that were really interesting in a different type of narrative. But when you want to try to add significant offense, and George McPhee said this to me many, many years ago. He said, when you're picking in the top 10, sometimes you're beholden to the consensus. When you're a little bit further down, he says you can just say we're taking a shot here. We're taking and it's not like, oh, just throw a dart blindly. They're doing it, but they're not worried. We're going to take a guy we think is the best goal scorer, and I don't think there was any question that Cole Eiserman would have been in that group of players that they were looking at as they moved up to pick 21.
Canadiens opted with Michael Hage at 21, of course, and who I had a chance to see at Habs development camp. some time ago here, and he was really good. Like, I didn't know that he was that great a skater. He really was. But where did you have him on your list?
Oh, I think I had him right around there. I'm pretty sure I had him somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I'm wearing my shirt. It's a Michigan shirt. Who's got it better than us? That's Jim Harbaugh that made that comment, and I'm wearing it in honor of Michael. You know, Michael lost his father in a very sad accident last summer of 2023, and you think about losing somebody so instrumental in your life, and then watching Michael, you know, at the beginning of the year, and then just progress over the course of the year. He's got a lovely family. His mother, his brother, younger brother, is going to go play in Chicago. Michael's going to go play at the University of Michigan, which I think is a great spot for him to continue his development. Here's how I'll describe Michael. He's a sneaky, really good skilled player. Like, he's not going to race up and down the ice, but you're watching the game play. He plays it with a great sense of what's unfolding in front of him. Then he's got the skill to take advantage. And he's one of those players that when you watch, he's all of a sudden by a defender going, what happened there? Or he's making that play. Oh, geez, you didn't see it. He puts defenders back on their heels because of his offensive ability, and he's got such an ease to his skill, the skating, the shot, the passing. Just a really gifted player. I think Montreal got a real high-end player in Michael at 21.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because he surprised me at how good he was, and I think that's what you're trying to say, that he's going to surprise a lot of players. They'll know he's a good player, then all of a sudden he beats them with like, oh, I knew this guy was good. I didn't know he was that good, type of thing. All right, in ending, and this has been so much fun, but give me one name of someone that was drafted late first round or second round or whatever that we haven't talked about, that one day we're going to look back 10 years from now, we're going to say, you know, that guy was the best bang for your buck in the draft. Wow. This guy was really, like, you know, David Pastrnak scores 50 goals a year for the Boston Bruins. I think he was drafted like 25th or something like that, right?
He was, yep.
You know, so like, is there somebody late first round or second round? Patrice Bergeron, we're talking about the Bruins. He was drafted 45th. You know, I was saying the other day that I think the 2003 draft with Alain Chaîné, I was saying that I think it's, you know, one of the best drafts in the history of the National Hockey League. And as good as it was and as deep as it was, if that draft had to be redone tomorrow, I think that Patrice Bergeron, who's drafted 45th, is the best player to come out of that draft. Now, we can have a debate because a lot of people love Ryan Getzlaf at 19, and, you know, there was a lot of good players in that draft, but, you know, Bergeron was a 45th pick overall. Pastrnak, I think, was 25th. Is there one player in this draft that was drafted later that we're going to say, and it could be Cole Eiserman at 20, by the way, because he was scheduled to go in the top 3, right? A year ago.
Yeah. And things change, and certainly, you know, players, you know, scrutiny, and, you know, you're looking, and I'll say this really quickly. Over the course of many, many years involved in the draft, both from our team perspective and from a media perspective, thousands of players have been drafted. I have yet, even once, to hear a team stand up and go, you know what? We drafted Tony Marinaro, but he's not a really good skater, doesn't handle the puck really well, not really sure how well he competes. Every team stands up after they've drafted a player and talks about how excited they are and talk about the player's strengths. So when you're drafting a player, that's what you're doing. I always say this: know what you want and then celebrate what you get, and then help them develop to be the best they can. So, you know, I would, the easy answer for me is Cole Hudson. Remember, Cole broke all Lane's records at the National Team Development Program. And, you know, I was, again, I start kicking myself at times that I underestimate Lane. You know, I had him in my top 32. I had Cole in my top 32. And yet I'm always thinking to myself, I might have underestimated them. Here's the player outside of Cole that I think very well may be able to, in a few years' time, he's going to have to get back to full health. He went through a real horrific injury that really impacted him, and that's Aaron Kivaharhu. He went to the Minnesota Wild. We all know the video when he went up to Bill.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, you got the steal of the draft. Aaron in his age group, in the 06 age group in the draft, was always highly regarded. He's a leader in the 06 group. And
Go ahead.
Yep.
It's allergy season, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with. Just excuse me for 1 second.
No, don't worry about it. I'll be able to recap, because for those who didn't know about Cole Hudson, you just mentioned him. He was a second-round pick, 43rd overall by the Washington Capitals. Cole Hudson out of the U.S. National Development Program in the USHL. And the player that you're talking about, and we've had a chance to see the video by now, is Aaron Kivoharu, who's a defenseman who was drafted by the Minnesota Wild, who played in Helsinki in the Finnish league.
And he had a terrible leg injury, and he rehabbed it, and he came back, and he certainly, you're rehabbing, you're not conditioning. He came back, and he certainly wasn't anywhere near the level of player that he was. His brain is outstanding. He's evasive and elusive, which is a quality that any player needs. A smaller player certainly needs that. He gets back to full health. That player could be one where you're looking down the road and going, oh boy. And the player I've compared him to, and ironically, he was a free agent. He went over to Finland before being signed by the New Jersey Devils, and that is Brian Rafalski. I think that Aaron might have the same type of capabilities.
Well, an NHL season is long. It's 82 games, and you have to deal with bumps and bruises and injuries and play through them, and not everyone is able to do so. But I think we just saw that Craig Button, who's either fighting allergies or a really bad cold and cough, is able to fight through it and give us his time and his expertise on the Sick Podcast. I'm not going to make you suffer any longer here on camera, but man, what a trooper you are.
It's allergies. I don't know why. Like I'm not allergic to anything, but obviously there's something in the grass or in the pollen that's got me in the last couple of days. Because usually this doesn't. I'm not sick. It's just a little bit of an allergy. I'll be past it. Tony, always a thrill to be with you. I love it every week.
Yeah, I used to have them as a teenager, and then all of a sudden, just 1 year, it went away. So anyway, knock on wood. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a great one. All right, there you have it. Craig Button, TSN hockey analyst and director of scouting, of course. All right, Marinaro, thank you all. And I want to thank Energy Transportation Group. I want to thank Tibi. I want to thank Playground. I want to thank Accent Insurance Solutions, and I want to thank Betway for their partnership and for their support. And thank all of you for watching and listening. If you liked it, like it, share it with your friends, comment Sick, S-I-C-K. Leave us a 5-star review on Instagram, on Apple Reviews, that is. It's our way of feeling the love for Shane Gomo and Master Control. Thanks for watching the Sick Podcast. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.